Have you ever had a moment when life felt like it was breaking apart right in front of your eyes? A moment when everything you thought was secure, everything you thought was real, suddenly felt empty and meaningless? Maybe it was the loss of someone you loved, or the end of a relationship you thought would last forever, or a day when you woke up and the career you once chased with all your energy suddenly felt hollow. That heavy, painful, confusing space where nothing feels the same anymore. That is often how awakening begins. People think awakening is all about peace, light, and joy, but the first touch of it often feels more like loss, grief, and even death. Not death of the body, but the death of the person you thought you were. This is the hidden truth. Awakening is not about becoming someone new. It is about realizing that the person you thought you were, the one who carried all the masks, all the roles, all the fears and desires, that person was never truly you. And when this realization begins to dawn, it feels like life is tearing the ground away from under your feet. The job that once gave you pride feels meaningless. The friendships that once felt alive now drain you. The dreams you chased for years suddenly lose all their shine. You look at your life and ask yourself, what is happening to me? Why does everything feel like it's falling apart? But in reality, it is not falling apart. It is falling away. The old self cannot survive awakening. The masks you wore to please others, the roles you played to belong, the false identities you held on to because you thought they kept you safe, all of these have to die. Think of it like wearing a costume for your entire life. Maybe your costume was being the good son or daughter, the perfect student, the responsible worker, the funny friend, the strong one who never breaks, or to the successful one who proves their worth. You wear that costume for so long that you forget it is not you. But one day, something shifts inside you. You start to feel suffocated. You start to sense there is someone under that costume, someone you have never truly met. That is what awakening does. It rips away the heavy costume. And yes, it feels terrifying because without it you don't know who you are anymore. The old self will resist with all its strength. It will whisper to you, "Don't let go. Without me, you'll have nothing. Without me, you'll be nobody." But awakening is merciless with lies. It burns them away like fire burns dry leaves. It hurts because you're letting go of the false self that gave you a sense of security. But at the same time, it frees you. Imagine a snake refusing to shed its old skin. It would suffocate and die. The shedding looks uncomfortable, even painful, but it is survival. Awakening is that shedding. If you cling to the old skin, you will suffer. But once it is gone, you can breathe again. Think about this in your own life. Maybe you built your entire identity around your career. You worked, you sacrificed, you achieved, and you thought this is who I am. But one day you wake up and all of it feels like dust in your hands. Your title, your salary, your achievements no longer give you joy. That is not depression. That is not failure. That is the old self dying. The part of you that needed validation, that measured itself by the outside world, is dissolving. Or maybe you had friendships where you always played a role. You were the one who listened, the one who cared for everyone, the one who made people laugh. But now when you are with them, the connection feels shallow, the energy feels heavy, and you wonder why. It is because the part of you that stayed just to belong is dying. It hurts when people drift away, but that is not rejection. It is rebirth. Even in love, awakening demands death. The old version of you that clung to others out of fear, that tried to earn love by pleasing, that was terrified of being alone, that version cannot survive awakening. Because once you awaken, you realize love does not come from outside. It is not something you must beg for or chase. It is already within you. And when you truly feel that, the patterns of jealousy, fear, and attachment begin to dissolve. Painful, yes. Lonely, yes. But necessary. Here is something no one tells you. Awakening feels like grief. You grieve the person you thought you were. You grieve the life you thought you wanted. You grieve the roles that once defined you. You may cry without knowing why. You may feel restless, lost, or empty. But grief is natural because you are mourning the death of the false self. You are saying goodbye to a life built on illusions. And, as painful as it feels, is the only way you can be reborn. Awakening is not about adding new layers. It is about stripping everything away until only the truth remains. The truth does not need approval. The truth does not need to be decorated. The truth does not even need to be believed. It simply is. Imagine your house burning down in a fire. At first, you panic, you grieve, you cry because you love that house. You decorated it, filled it with memories, made it feel like home. But when the fire takes it all, you are forced to stand in the ashes. At first, it feels like the end. But then you realize something. The fire destroyed what was temporary, but it could not touch you. You are still here. You are alive. And maybe for the first time, you are free. That is awakening. It burns away what is false, leaving only what is indestructible. And yet, the journey does not stop there. Because after the old self dies, you do not instantly feel whole. There's an in-between stage, a gap where you're no longer who you were, but not yet who you are becoming. This stage is the hardest. It feels like a void. You don't recognize yourself anymore. You don't know where life is going. You cannot go back, but you cannot see forward either. And in this void, most people panic. They cling to the old life. They run back to familiar patterns, even if those patterns no longer fit. But if you can stay in that void, if you can sit in the silence and surrender to the unknown, you will discover something miraculous. The void is not empty. It is full of potential. It is the womb of your rebirth. This is where surrender becomes your strength. You stop fighting the death. You stop demanding answers. You stop clinging to the past. And in that surrender, a peace begins to rise. Not the fragile peace of external comfort, but the unshakable peace of knowing who you are beyond all roles, beyond all masks, beyond all illusions. This is the gift hidden inside the pain. Once the old you has died, you finally meet yourself for the very first time. Not the self shaped by family, not the self molded by society, not the self driven by fear. You meet the silent, infinite, timeless presence that has always been underneath it all. And when you meet that, it feels like coming home after lifetimes of wandering. So if you're going through awakening right now, and it feels like your life is falling apart, remember this. Nothing real can be destroyed. Only illusions can die. The pain you feel is not your end. It is the cracking of a shell. And when the shell cracks, the bird does not die. The bird is finally born. Awakening feels like death at first, but it is not the end. It is the beginning of freedom, the beginning of truth, the beginning of a life where you're no longer pretending to be someone else. It is the moment you finally begin to live as who you really are.